Hey everyone on YouTube, it's Giles here. This is like the 6th time recording this video. If you've seen the title, you probably understand why it's a difficult subject. But funnily enough, the actual, talking about that and what I do, which you would think would be the hardest part of recording this video, isn't actually what's throwing me. I can't seem to start this video. I keep getting sidetracked, and then before I know it, it's like 15 minutes into the video, and I'm like, well, if you clicked on this video for information, or the sharing thereof of the subject of autism and self-harm, I'm not sure if you want to stick around for 15 minutes to hear it, I don't know. I'm a little bit out of fucks to give because I've been here trying to record this video for so long. First, I want to talk a little bit about self-diagnosis, and I want to talk about self-diagnosis because I love all your feedback. I love all the conversations we've been having. I especially love that you guys are clearly reading each other's comments. I don't know why. It's just something I really like about that. So it's not just whether you like what I'm saying, you're then reading what each other's saying, and there's some really nice conversations happening there. But there has been people expressing skepticism about self-diagnosis. And I think this is an appropriate thing to address when I'm about to talk about autism and self-harm, because if you're looking up those two together, autism and self-harm, you might be in a similar position to myself, having just began the going down the rabbit hole for autism. So you're going to be going through those issues of self-diagnosis, and I say this, I haven't just gone down the rabbit hole. I've built a hotel down there, and my self-diagnosis comes from under advisement of a lot of mental health professionals. They might not be able to formally diagnose me, but I'm still going to trust their opinion, and I'm going to trust the opinion of friends that I have who have autism that seem to be following me word for word for everything I say. And as I say, going down the rabbit hole of autism, watching people's personal testimonies, all the YouTube channels that are available, it's just clear as glass. And so somebody said in a sort of derogatory term, I'm gonna say sort of, I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt, but they gave the sort of the comparison, rather ad hominem example of somebody watching a short video on TikTok and just deciding that they were autistic. Call me mental if you like, but I just don't think that happens as often as people think. I really don't. I think it can start it off, it can put the spark in, but I think this is where the idea of my previous video came in that I think it is very arguable that autism is considerably more common than people think. It's just, does it need to be diagnosed, and or can someone just go through their life and it not bother them in any way, therefore they wouldn't need to be diagnosed. And we are reaching a stage where we are diagnosing it quicker and quicker, which I think is brilliant, because quite frankly, I think society could get to the point where it really is no big deal, and it's just a simple acknowledgement that, to follow my analogy of my A-bomb video, there's just some people that go through a particular door and some people that have to find another way around the door. It's as simple as that. And when somebody hops on the trend or anything like that, what is the actual product of it? Like if I sit there and I say, if I sit there and with very little research and I just say I'm autistic. What is the actual product of that? Is it togetherness? Because the thing is, if it's togetherness, if it's for attention, the people who you're going to get the most attention from would likely be other autistic people, and I think you're going to find out pretty fast if you're not actually autistic. If you're trying to draw autistic people towards you, you know, you're not going to have a lot to talk about. Or if you do have similar interests, you're not going to tessellate that well with them psychologically. But people can say it's a phase. You know, well, that's what they said about my hair 20 years ago. You know, and actually that's what they said about me liking heavy metal. That's what we said about me liking gothic stuff. You know, it's sort of people don't have the right to say one way or the other where it comes to things like this. You know, it's like if you had a kid that was like I don't know, non-binary. Let's go for that. Let's say you had a kid that is like non-binary. You don't have a right to say one way or another. Or, you know, say like you're skeptical. You can't say everybody that if it is a phase, then it'll be a phase. If phases phase out, that's how they expose themselves as phases. You know, you can't declare something a phase. You've got to wait for it to phase out. That's what makes it a phase. You know, but for me, I can only run by how I'm feeling, and I feel great. And that is from hating myself for the majority of my life. I like myself right now, and that's been in the past couple of days since making that A-bomb video, because that was the celebration of the hotel I built down the rabbit hole, and it's all stemmed from the fact that I accept that door does not open for me. That's it. And it's made life worth living again. It's that just the simple fact that my frustrations at my inadequacies aren't necessary because I'm not inadequate. You know, it's sort of like I'm trying to get blood from a stone. You know, I'm sort of like saying you can't do these things. Then I say the exact same thing in a different tone. You can't do these things. and the irony is that I socially I feel an improvement in me, but it's from a very different perspective. So I gave this example a few videos ago, but I think it's still relevant, and it has evolved a little bit in my head, and that is going into the corner store, the corner shop. There's a petrol station that I go to. We get my coffee most mornings. This is just a I don't know, thing that I do. I used to do it while I was working at the DWP. I used to work at the DWP, by the way. I was a case manager and then a team leader. We should do a Q&A on that at some point. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? But anyway, after working there, I sort of wanted to keep the routine of leaving the house in the morning just to stay on it. And there's usually the same guy in the petrol station, and I do what I call the whoopee cushion through a harmonica greeting, which sounds like, you know, and that's me trying to communicate. That is me trying so hard to communicate, but really in that moment I am non-communicative. You know, I'm just sort of like, it's the best I got. It's the best you got from me. But as I pass the chap and I go to the coffee machine and I start making the coffee, I just have that moment where I think to myself, you know, you remember that rabbit hole you went down where you built a hotel, you know. you sure that's not playing a factor into what's going on right now? And so I think about it, and it's the place that I go to nearly every day. And it's the chap behind the counter who is there nearly every day. And I go back to buy my coffee, and suddenly I'm talking to him really easily. And there's two things going on. I've slowed myself down enough to pay attention to the fact that we're not best friends, but I know this guy. I know this guy well enough to talk to him. And I trust him. And I trust myself. And that just, like I said, it's not a verbose conversation. I don't turn into a stand-up comedian. But it helps me slow down and realise to trust the situation, because these surroundings are familiar to me. See, it's usually, beforehand, it will be hindered by my assumptions of my own inferiority. So I'll go in there and I think, I'm weird. Who would want to talk to me? Make my coffee. Bye. And that's about it. And today, I was downtown with my brother today, and people are annoying, aren't they? You know, they're absolutely everywhere, and there's many of them. And it's interesting reasoning with myself as I'm getting wound up in public. And a lot of my old subscribers, you'll know all about me getting wound up in public, because back in the day, I would come home and I would make a YouTube video about it. And it would be very comical, it would be funny, but it would be coming from a very real place of frustration. And that became harder to do the older I got, because the older I got, the more I expected myself to get over it. Just to sort of to say, you know, you're saying to yourself, you know, you're 30 years old now, isn't it about time you get comfortable in public and stop like freaking out every time somebody farts too close to you? You know? And the thing is, that's the reality of the situation, you know. Like sometimes me and brother, we're walking back from town, and they're like these two really like confident blokey blokes, and they are so close to us. Like I joke that they should have bought us flowers as they pass by. Like not as they pass by. I wasn't sitting there antagonising. I wait until they were safely out of earshot before I said things about them. But like, but you know, even that they are they're particularly sporty sports people. It's pouring with rain and they're in shorts, and there really is no big deal at hand. And that was one of those other things where I put the brakes on. I did see someone in a YouTube video talking about the autistic mind moving very fast. I'm still yet to learn a little bit more about that, but I have evidence. But in that instance, again, I'm like, autism. It's no one's fault. I got issues. They kind of got issues as well. That's kind of what life is, isn't it? It's a clash of issues, because I'm like, you know, all like shy and non-verbal and weird at times, and they're like too much the other way. But it's little things like that, and they all really add up. All these little things that you can put the brakes on to reassess. And again, it's not about fixing anything. It's about finding a different way around it, and a different way to handle a certain situation. For example, when I sit there and I go, I'm autistic because these two guys are walking so uncomfortably close. That doesn't suddenly make me capable of doing all the things a confident, outspoken person would do. It doesn't give me the power to suddenly go, "Excuse me, gentlemen, could you please not walk so close to me? It's rather obnoxious." Instead, it just keeps me contained. It stops me flaring up. It stops me sort of going deep down somewhere in a really ugly place. This is all your fault because you don't know how to behave in public, or anything like that. It's that is what self-diagnosing has done for me, and it ties in around my house. It ties in around domestic stuff, and again, domestic stuff that I'm finding impossible to keep on top with. Let's take a look. Let's take something like cleaning your apartment. I have a hell of a time getting on top of that, and there are ways to do it. There are ways to do it if I accept that it is a difficult thing for me to do. And then we're going on to self-harm, and you might think this was all off subject. I've gone from all of this right up to this, and you might think it's off subject, or you might understand exactly the direction that I'm going with this, because there is as I say, from what I've explained, but I've also been reading up on it as well, there is a correlation between autism and self-harm, especially with undiagnosed autism, because of that exasperation of just like not being able to do stuff, and the frustration of feeling like what everybody else does, using the door again. Everybody else goes through the door. How come I can't go through the door? You know, like, what the hell is wrong with me? And then before you know it, you're saying it's all your fault and you've done it all wrong, and it all goes black. In some cases, literally, and this is the. For me, I keep joking about going down the rabbit hole and building a hotel there. This is the darkest corner of the rabbit hole. And I always thought I was unflappable. And I really, really thought I was. I thought that, you know, like when people give trigger warnings and stuff like that, I always just sort of thought, but this was brand new. That I've never had anything like this. So I went directly to the source and typed in autism and self-harm into YouTube. First of all, when you type in autism and self-harm into YouTube, it doesn't give you the search results. Instead, it gives you a "you're not alone" message, phone number to the Samaritans, and some self-help topics. And you have to. There's a little blue link right at the bottom that says "show search results anyway." And again, I understand why they've done that. That they've done that. My previous self was frustrated in that moment because I feel like the results are being hidden from me or being deterred in some way. That's sort of an inherent kind of pessimism, but I do think there's an innocence there in what they've done. That's a random thing to bring up, but I thought I'd touch on that just in case anybody else knows about it. But there's some great videos here. You've got Dana Anderson, Autism and Self-Harm, the Aspie World, Do You Hit Your Head? And we'll get into that in a minute. You've got Agony Auntie, When Stimming Becomes Self-Harm. We're kind of going to get into that in a minute as well. And there's another one I looked at. let's see, Autism and the Emotional Toll of Self-Hatred and Daily Burdens. That's Orion Kelly, that autistic guy. And then why do autistic people engage in self-injurious behaviour? And that one was by Becoming Savannah. And the reason why I'm mentioning all of these titles is because I tried, and highlight that, I tried to watch all of these videos and I couldn't get through them. They hit far too close for me, and I you know, watching all of this stuff about autism and absorbing as much as I can, I had no idea how close to home it could get, and it's to the point where I don't just identify with what they're saying. I'm frightened by how much I identify with how they're saying, and it causes such an uncontrollable reaction. And I've never had anything like that before in my life. I play these videos and I am trying to sit through them, and my eyes like drift to the side, like I can't watch the video, and then I just have to pause it. I can only make it through like a minute or two of these videos. Even the Agony Auntie one, I think that was I can see the watermark. I think it's an Instagram video, but that was like 2 minutes. I couldn't even finish that one. And I mean, you could argue that somewhere something triggered me the most out of all of them, and it was arguably the "Do You Hit Your Head" video, because I do hit my head. Although I'm gonna be interested to see how that transpires moving forward. You know, but it's like I was looking at these different perspectives of talking about it, but they were all kind of combining with each other. Like, do you hit your head? The self-hatred thing, when stimming becomes self-harm. And I'm like, oh my God, like, it's all hitting me at once. This is, no pun intended, it's all hitting me at once, and that is not pretty. You know, the thing is, I've been very prone to self-harm over the years, and I've been prone to self-harm for all of my adult life. A little bit in childhood, but I'm one of these people that can't actually remember childhood that well. I don't know why, and I think back and it's just like a weird grey blob to me. Like I may have been doing it back then, but I can't remember too much. Like I'd say anything during the teens and onwards, but it always it got worse the older I got, because you know, that feeling of like, you're so and so years old and you're still doing this, you're so and so years old and you're still doing that, and so the aggression came out a lot more visceral and a lot more unforgiving. I mean, I usually, I know people don't like to talk about direct self-harm, but I think this is, when it's this visceral, I don't think talking about how you do it is too much of a problem when it's this visceral, because if you're going to do it, it's visceral. It happens in a snap. Like you can't. There's no time to sit there and theorize about how you're going to do it. It's an outburst. You know, I mean, that thing I talked about, the comparison between stimming. If you're going to stim, you're going to stim. You know, it's you don't ever see an autistic person going, I think I'll schedule stimming in 5 minutes time. You know, it happens. And so I typically I would strike around my hair, because you can't see what's below the hair. Although that wasn't too conscious, because I would also do it around my forehead, which never bruises for some reason. It's I mean, it is quite hefty, but it's sort of like I think there was some kind of subconsciousness to it, in that I would be sure to not hit too hard, because about 2 weeks ago was the only time that I had ever caused something visible to happen in my 36 years of life and my arguable 20 years of self-harming. Like this was the first time that something distinct in my appearance was showing, and that was because although I usually hit myself with my hand around there like a punch, I hit with the back of the hand. And I'd done that before sometimes in the past, but I hit some kind of like nerve or something in it, and do you know what? I can still I don't even know if that's like still a lump. I don't think it's a lump, but it's just like a nugget in the hand. I don't know, but I hit it pretty hard, and like the whole hand bruised, and that's like the first time something visual happened. And yeah, it's but again, it's like it's like a blackout when that happens, and sometimes I will use the door, and I will use the door to slam, like I how do I put this? I don't slam my head on the door. I slam the door on my head. You know, I'm just pulling it repeatedly into my head, and I've wrecked keyboards because I've broken keyboards over my head before, but the whole time this is all mixed with often some very nasty language about myself, and the subjects that trigger this is why this whole subject is so important to me. The subjects that trigger these things are heavily linked with autism. And so when I go down this rabbit hole and I consider these issues, my temper subsides a lot when things go wrong, when I can't do things. You know, a lot of some of the things that can sort of trigger my temper, for example, will be say like the computer isn't working. Which could have a logical point of frustration, because I work from home, I work on my computer. If the computer's not doing something, that can be very annoying. But then I can take it down this horrible avenue of like, I wish I had a better computer. Why don't I have a better computer? Because I don't have enough money. Why don't you have enough money? Because you're not earning enough. Because you don't have a good enough job. Because you can't get a good enough job. For starters, you can't communicate well enough to get a better job. And it goes all the way back until you're useless, you're a dickhead, and I want to hurt you. And so that to me is why we know when somebody says talks about self-diagnosis and whether a self-diagnosis is relevant. I'm literally like, you can't afford to question it. You go down those avenues to get it looked at, go down those avenues to get it verified, but trust in the autistic community, communicate with the autistic community, listen to people, listen to yourself, listen to how you're feeling. It's an immensely important thing not to just overlook. You know, the root of the pain and suffering that is there can pop like a balloon. It can just be gone in an instant. You know? Well, that's maybe wishful thinking. Not gone in an instant. Let's not go crazy here. But you can be given a brake pedal. You know? And obviously you can get talent for using it. I can't tell you that I am completely now not an angry man whatsoever, but there has been a dramatic increase in circumstances where I can just go, hold on, what's this all about then? And I think, you know, for a while I am going to have to have to say the word autistic every 5 minutes just to remind myself, just until it becomes that understanding becomes second nature, because it's 36 years of not knowing, it's 20 years of solid stimming. You know, there's a reason when someone comes out about something, they kind of got to do it twice as hard just to make sure they don't go back in the closet. You know, it's I don't know. It's you're trying to undo, and as well, you know, with the subject of masking, trying to undo years of masking. That means years of masking means years of accumulated knowledge of how to mask. And that makes you a tricky adversary. It means you've got to keep one eye on yourself and what you're doing and what you're trying to avoid and what you're trying to because I think the issue I find with masking is that you think you are you think like you don't just mask for others, you mask to yourself and you delude yourself, and you think you are more competent than how you actually are in that particular instance, when how you actually are is more competent, but it's greatly hindered because the competence you're portraying is just an impression. And that is what has made me feel good about the self-diagnosis, is because it's like, sorry, this has suddenly become very difficult for me to articulate. I don't know if you noticed. It's sort of like now that I'm no longer pretending to be confident, I'm starting to experience what my actual confidence looks like. And again, it's not perfect. Like your confidence doesn't grow on trees. Everything has to be honed. But to experience comfort when I'm not just declaring that I'm comfortable is really quite a life-changing experience. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. And the thing is, on the self-harm subject, I realise we're talking specifically about autism. There are other factors I should probably add right at the very end here. There are factors in my life that have made me, that have affected, you know, I mean, autism isn't a template. It's all, it's the way the mind works, and then you combine that with all the other experiences you've had in life that have influenced your personality. But the reason why I think autism is important to look at, especially when it's, you know, when you're self-diagnosing and researching it, is because to understand that greatly helps you reconcile with other things you may have experienced in your life that may have caused you difficulty. For example, I suffer with a great deal of trauma for various reasons. A few of my subscribers know this. When I was about 15 years old, I was assaulted by about 20 people just around the corner from where I live. That's just one thing of many things, and that still to this day I have a very hard time going out at night. And you know, that's something that I mean, I don't want to do it right now, we've been talking long enough, but that's something that I can now, instead of looking at that from the perspective of someone who's masking, or from the perspective of how I think I should be dealing with that, I can now look at it through the eyes of autism and see what an autistic mind could deal with that situation. you know, because half the time the whole subject of masking, you're basically on the wrong rails trying to sort out a Rubik's cube, you know. My analogies are getting worse and worse. I'm like Ben Stiller in Dodgeball. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I keep saying I'll leave it there, but you know, my brain is just it's a brain. I will talk to you guys soon. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later.